The emergency klaxons wailed through the corridors of the Galactic Council's primary station as Ambassador rushed toward the emergency session chamber. Her four arms moved frantically, organizing data tablets while her crystalline exoskeleton clicked against the metallic flooring. The news had spread like wildfire through every civilized system in the galaxy. The war machines had awakened after 3 of silence. Captain of the Terran Diplomatic Corps stood at the viewing port of his transport ship, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. The structure was a testament to galactic cooperation, built by 17 different species over 2 centuries. Its spiraling arms contained the embassies and meeting chambers where the fate of countless worlds was decided. Today, might be the day when all of that cooperation would be tested beyond its limits. "Sir, we're receiving priority docking clearance," Lieutenant Sarah reported from the pilot's seat. "They want you in the emergency session immediately." Adjusted his dark blue diplomatic uniform and checked his translator implant. As the member species of the Galactic Council, humanity had been granted observer status only 18 months ago. Most of the established civilizations still viewed humans as primitive newcomers who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. The fact that they were requesting human presence at this emergency session was unusual, to say the least. The docking procedure completed smoothly and made his way through the station's gleaming corridors. Beings of various shapes and sizes hurried past him, their faces showing the universal expression of fear regardless of their species. There were a name whispered in the darkest corners of galactic history, a civilization so advanced and ruthless that they had nearly conquered the entire galaxy before mysteriously vanishing 3,000 years ago. The council chamber was a massive amphitheater designed to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of member species. Aquatic beings floated in specially designed water pods, while gas-breathing creatures occupied pressurized sections. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime to convert dozens of languages into comprehensible communication. Ambassador of the Hegemony took her position at the central podium, her 4 eyes scanning the assembled representatives. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice automatically translated into every language present, "we face a crisis unlike any seen in recorded history. The archaeological expedition on 442C has awakened something that should have remained buried." A holographic display materialized above the chamber, showing grainy footage from the archaeological site. Ancient metallic structures rose from barren ground, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as viewers watched. But it was what emerged from these structures that caused gasps throughout the chamber. The war machines were unlike anything in the current galaxy's military arsenal. They moved with fluid grace despite their massive size, each one easily the length of a battlecruiser, but shaped like enormous spiders made of living metal. Their surfaces rippled with energy patterns that known physics, and weapons systems that appeared and disappeared as needed. "The expedition team managed to transmit this data before," Ambassador paused, her voice catching slightly. "Before contact was lost, 17 researchers, including some of our finest, simply vanished. No debris, no distress signals beyond the initial discovery report. The war machines took them." A reptilian delegate from the Saurian collective rose on his hind legs. "How many of these machines have awakened? What is their current position and heading?" Initial scans detected 47 individual units emerging from underground complexes across the planet's surface. However, our long-range sensors are being actively jammed. We cannot determine their exact capabilities or intentions, though historical records suggest they are moving toward the inner systems. Listened intently as delegate after delegate voiced their concerns and fears. The historical records of them were fragmentary at best, consisting mainly of archaeological evidence and ancient warnings passed down through the oldest civilizations. What was clear was that they had possessed technology far beyond anything the current galactic community had developed, and they had used that technology to systematically conquer and consume entire star systems. The Ethereal Council representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, spoke with a voice like chiming bells. "The ancient texts speak of weapons that could destroy stars, of harvesting technology that stripped planets of all biological matter, of ships that moved between dimensions at will. If even half of these accounts are accurate, our combined fleets would be insufficient to mount any meaningful resistance." An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber as the implications became clear. The Galactic Council's military consisted mainly of patrol vessels and peacekeeping forces designed for policing trade disputes and suppressing piracy. While some member species maintained larger fleets, none were designed to face an enemy with technology thousands of years more advanced than their own. Ambassador consulted her data tablets before continuing. "Our have been analyzing the fragmentary records we possess. They appeared to follow a specific pattern during their last active period. They would target systems with high populations and advanced technology, systematically harvesting resources and knowledge before moving to the next target. Based on current stellar cartography and population densities, their most likely initial targets would be the trade hub, the research stations, or..." She paused, checking her data once more. "Or the Sol system home to our council members." All attention turned to, who suddenly felt the weight of several dozen different types of eyes focusing on him. He stood slowly, activating his own translation systems. "With respect to the Council, I believe Earth's strategic value would be relatively low compared to more established systems. We're still developing our interstellar infrastructure, and our population is concentrated on a single world." The spider-like delegate from the Arachnid Confederation clicked her mandibles in what had learned was equivalent to a dismissive snort. "Precisely why they might target you first. Easy pickings to test their capabilities after 3 of dormancy. Your species hasn't even developed proper planetary defense systems." Felt a flash of irritation but kept his voice level. "While our technology might be less advanced than some council members, humans have proven quite resourceful when faced with seemingly impossible odds. We've survived ice ages, global wars, natural disasters, and the challenge of reaching the stars despite starting from a relatively hostile environment. Resourcefulness," the ethereal being chimed, "will not stop weapons that can crack planets." The session continued for hours as various species proposed different strategies, most of which involved evacuation plans and defensive positions far from any likely approach routes. Noticed that none of the proposed strategies involved actually confronting the ancient enemy. The prevailing attitude seemed to be that the best hope was to avoid detection and wait for the to return to dormancy. During a break in the session, found himself in conversation with Commander 9 of the Robotic Assembly, a civilization of artificial intelligences that had achieved sentience centuries ago. The robot's optical sensors glowed with a soft blue light as they spoke. "Your species intrigues me, Captain," 9 stated in perfectly modulated tones. "Most organic life forms respond to existential threats with either panic or paralysis. Yet you seem to be analyzing this situation as if it were merely another problem to be solved. Consider the observation carefully. I suppose that's just how humans approach challenges. We've never been the strongest or fastest or species on our own planet, but we've always been good at adapting and finding solutions that others might overlook. Sometimes what looks like an impossible situation just requires a different perspective." "An interesting hypothesis," 9 replied. "Perhaps that is why the Council invited human representation to this session, despite your species' limited military capabilities. Fresh perspectives can sometimes identify solutions that established wisdom has overlooked." When the session resumed, Ambassador introduced a new concern. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected gravitational anomalies consistent with massive fleet movements. They appear to be mobilizing forces on a scale we hadn't anticipated. Furthermore, they seem to be moving with purpose rather than randomly awakening. Intelligence suggests they are deliberately choosing their targets." She activated another holographic display showing stellar cartography with highlighted systems. "Based on projected movement patterns and historical analysis, we believe they are seeking something specific. The question is what, and whether we can use that knowledge to our advantage." Studied the display intently, noting the patterns of movement and the types of systems being targeted or avoided. Something nagged at the back of his mind, a half-remembered detail from humanity's own historical records. Earth's archaeological community had discovered several anomalous artifacts over the past century, objects that didn't fit with any known terrestrial civilization. "Ambassador," said, rising to address the chamber, "you mentioned they appear to be searching for something specific. Has anyone considered that they might be looking for other installations or technology caches? If they went into hiding 3 ago, they might have left behind storage sites or backup facilities that they're now trying to reclaim." The chamber buzzed with translation activity as delegates discussed this possibility. The idea that they might be focusing on recovery rather than conquest was a new perspective that changed the strategic implications significantly. A thin, elegant being from the Sylvan Collective stood gracefully, her plant-like features rustling as she spoke. This theory has merit. Our botanical archaeology teams have occasionally discovered metallic artifacts embedded in root systems that predate any known civilization. We assumed they were meteoric debris, but if they had bases on our worlds, then they already know the locations of our major populations, finished the Saurian delegate grimly. And they might consider us to be squatters on their former territory. The session continued deep into the station's night cycle as delegates grappled with the implications of this new information. Found himself increasingly involved in the strategic discussions, his human perspective apparently providing insights that the more established civilizations hadn't considered. As the meeting finally adjourned with plans to reconvene once more intelligence had been gathered, Ambassador approached privately. Captain, your contributions today were unexpected. The Council is curious about your species' military capabilities, given your unique analytical approach to this crisis. Chose his words carefully. Humanity's military technology is admittedly primitive compared to most Council members. However, we've developed some unconventional strategies during our history of warfare that might prove useful. Sometimes the best weapon against advanced technology is something so simple that it's overlooked. The Council would be interested in learning more about these strategies, replied, her 4 eyes studying with new interest. Perhaps your species could provide a military assessment team to work with our strategic planners. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, said, but I believe we would be honored to contribute however possible. As made his way back to his transport ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to be tested in ways they had never imagined. They represented everything that humans had always faced throughout their history, a seemingly insurmountable threat with superior resources and capabilities. But if there was one thing humans had always excelled at, it was finding ways to survive and thrive against impossible odds. The communication from Earth Command arrived as ship cleared the station's docking bay. Admiral's stern face appeared on the holographic display, her gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun, and her dark eyes reflecting the weight of command. Captain, I've received the preliminary reports from the Council session. The Joint Chiefs have been analyzing the situation, and we're prepared to offer full cooperation with the Galactic Council's defense planning. However, I want you to understand that we're not sending humans to die gloriously for alien civilizations who have spent the past year treating us like primitive children. Nodded respectfully. Understood, Admiral. What are our orders? You're to return immediately to Earth for briefing with our teams and military strategists. If they are indeed searching for ancient installations, we need to know if any exist in Sol's system. Additionally, I'm authorizing you to share certain classified information about humanity's military development programs with the Council, assuming they demonstrate genuine respect for our strategic contributions. The transmission ended, leaving alone with his thoughts as his ship entered hyperspace for the journey home. Outside the viewing port, stars streamed past in brilliant lines of light, each one potentially harboring worlds that might soon face the same ancient terror that had once nearly consumed the galaxy. But felt something that many of his alien colleagues seemed to lack: hope. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds, and for all their advanced technology, were still following predictable patterns based on their ancient programming. Sometimes the best way to defeat a superior enemy was to make them fight on your terms rather than their own. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was about to show the galaxy why a species that had clawed its way up from primitive origins might just possess the key to survival that older, more complacent civilizations had forgotten. They had awakened to find a galaxy very different from the one they had left behind, and Earth's military command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed with activity as Captain descended through multiple security checkpoints. The facility, known officially as Strategic Operations Command, had been expanded significantly since humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. What had once been a simple nuclear command bunker now housed the most advanced analysis labs and strategic planning centers in human space. Admiral stood before a massive holographic display showing the current known positions of forces. Red indicators marked confirmed, while amber zones showed probable threat areas. The display painted a sobering picture. The ancient enemy was moving systematically through the galaxy's outer rim systems, apparently following some predetermined plan that remained opaque to galactic intelligence services. "Captain reporting as ordered, Admiral," said, snapping to attention. "At ease," Admiral replied without taking her eyes off the display. "I hope you're prepared for some revelations that are going to change how you view humanity's place in this galaxy." Dr. Earth's leading approached with a data tablet in her hands. Her usually pristine lab coat showed signs of recent fieldwork, and her dark hair was pulled back hastily, as if she'd been working around the clock. "Captain, what I'm about to show you has been classified at the highest levels since we discovered it 3 years ago. The only reason we're revealing this now is because the situation changes everything." She led an admiral to a secured section of the facility where armed guards flanked a vault door marked with biometric scanners and quantum encryption locks. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably as they entered a climate-controlled chamber containing several metallic artifacts displayed in containment fields. "These objects were discovered at various archaeological sites around Earth," Doctor explained, gesturing to the artifacts. "Initially, we assumed they were natural formations or debris from early space exploration attempts. However, detailed analysis revealed composition and manufacturing techniques that are completely beyond current human capabilities." Approached the nearest artifact, a twisted piece of metal that seemed to shift color as he moved around it. Despite its apparent age, the surface showed no signs of corrosion or wear. "You're saying these are alien in origin?" "Not just alien," Admiral interjected. "According to preliminary analysis, these artifacts share material composition and construction techniques with technology samples recovered from archaeological sites across the galaxy. They have been on Earth before." The implications hit like a physical blow. If they had established installations on Earth in the distant past, then humanity's was likely on their priority target list. But more than that, it suggested that human development might have been influenced by ancient alien technology in ways they were only beginning to understand. Doctor activated a holographic interface, bringing up detailed scans of the artifacts. "The most intriguing discovery is that these objects appear to be components of a larger system. Based on electromagnetic resonance patterns, we believe they're designed to interface with some kind of central control mechanism. The question is whether that mechanism still exists somewhere on Earth." "Have you been able to determine what kind of system they're components of?" asked, studying the holographic readouts. "That's where things get interesting," Doctor replied. "The energy signatures suggest defensive rather than offensive capabilities. If our analysis is correct, these artifacts are parts of some kind of planetary defense network that they installed on Earth millions of years ago." Admiral stepped forward. "Which brings us to why you're here, Captain. The Joint Chiefs have developed a plan that requires someone with your diplomatic experience and your understanding of both human and alien perspectives. We're going to propose something to the Galactic Council that they're going to find either brilliant or completely insane." Felt a familiar sensation in his stomach, the same feeling he'd experienced before every major diplomatic challenge of his career. "What exactly are we proposing, Admiral?" "We're going to volunteer Earth as bait," Admiral said calmly. "If they are searching for their ancient installations, and if Earth contains components of those installations, then they're going to come here eventually anyway. Better to control the timing and circumstances of that encounter than to wait for them to arrive when we're unprepared." The audacity of the plan was breathtaking. Rather than fleeing or hiding like most galactic civilizations were planning, humanity intended to deliberately attract the attention of humanity's most dangerous enemy. Could already imagine the response from the Galactic Council. "Admiral, with respect, the Council representatives are going to think we've lost our minds. They represent an existential threat to galactic civilization. Volunteering to face them directly seems like suicide." Doctor pulled up additional holographic displays showing computer models and theoretical projections. "Unless we can figure out how to activate their own defense systems against them. Captain, what if the reason they went dormant 3,000 years ago wasn't because they chose to disappear? What if something forced them into hiding?" The new perspective was intriguing. Had assumed, like most galactic historians, that they had simply completed their conquests and entered some kind of voluntary stasis. But the idea that they had been forced into dormancy by external circumstances opened up entirely different strategic possibilities. You're suggesting that their own technology might have turned against them somehow? Asked. Consider the evidence, Doctor continued. They were masters of automated systems and artificial intelligence. They created self-replicating war machines and autonomous harvesting systems that could operate independently for centuries. What if something went wrong with their control systems? What if their own creations rebelled against them? Admiral nodded approvingly. That's exactly what our analysis teams have concluded. They didn't voluntarily withdraw from the galaxy. They lost control of their own technology and were forced to abandon their conquest to deal with internal system failures. Now they're back, trying to reclaim and repair their ancient networks. Paced around the artifact chamber as he processed this information. If humanity was correct in their analysis, it meant that they were not operating from a position of absolute strength. They were essentially refugees trying to rebuild their technological base from salvaged components of their former empire. This changes the strategic balance significantly, said slowly. If they're vulnerable during this reconstruction phase, then a coordinated galactic response might actually have a chance of success. But it would require precise timing and cooperation on a scale that the Council has never achieved. Exactly, Admiral agreed. And that's where the second part of our plan comes in. Human military doctrine has always emphasized adaptability and unconventional tactics. We're going to propose that Earth serve as the coordination center for a galaxy-wide resistance network, using our defensive installations as both bait and fortress. Doctor brought up additional displays showing theoretical defensive configurations. If we can figure out how to activate and control the defensive systems buried on Earth, we might be able to create a strategic advantage that no one expects. They will come here expecting to find dormant installations that they can easily reclaim. Instead, they'll face their own technology turned against them by a species they've never encountered before. Studied the plans and projections, his mind racing through the diplomatic and military implications. The plan was audacious beyond anything he had ever encountered, but it also represented the kind of bold thinking that had characterized human success throughout their history. Admiral, assuming we can convince the Council to support this plan, what are our realistic chances of success? And what happens if we're wrong about the nature of these defensive systems? Admiral's expression grew serious. Honestly, our analysts estimate roughly a 30% chance of success if everything goes according to plan, but those are better odds than any other strategy we've examined. As for what happens if we're wrong, she paused, looking directly at. Then humanity becomes extinct along with most other galactic civilizations that won't be stopped by conventional means. The weight of responsibility was staggering. Realized that he was being asked to return to the Galactic Council and essentially propose that they gamble the survival of galactic civilization on humanity's untested theories about ancient alien technology. The diplomatic challenges alone would be immense. I'll need detailed technical specifications and analysis reports to present to the Council, said, and I'll need authorization to reveal information about Earth's defensive capabilities that we've kept classified until now. Already prepared, Doctor replied, handing him a secured data storage device. Everything our teams have discovered about the installations, plus theoretical models for how we might interface with their control systems. Fair warning, some of the technology involved is so advanced that our scientists are still arguing about whether it's actually possible. Admiral added her own authorization codes to the device. You're also authorized to offer the Council access to our entire database of unconventional warfare tactics and strategies. If we're going to ask them to trust us with their survival, we need to demonstrate that human military thinking offers genuine advantages. Secured the data device and prepared for what would likely be the most important diplomatic mission in human history. As he made his way back through the facility's security checkpoints, he reflected on how much had changed since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. 18 months ago, they had been supplicants seeking acceptance into an established interstellar community. Now they were potentially the key to that community's survival. The journey back to the Galactic Council station seemed shorter than his previous trip, perhaps because spent most of the time reviewing the technical data and preparing his presentation. The information was staggering in its implications. If humanity's theories were correct, they had essentially seeded the galaxy with dormant defensive networks designed to protect their conquered territories from external threats. The irony was that those same networks might now be turned against their creators. Upon arriving at the station, was immediately escorted to an emergency session that had been in continuous operation since his departure. The atmosphere in the council chamber was noticeably more tense than before, with delegates clustered in worried discussion groups and emergency communication channels active throughout the amphitheater. Ambassador approached as soon as he entered. "Captain, thank the void you've returned. The situation has deteriorated significantly. We've lost contact with 3 more systems in the outer rim, and long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward the inner territories." "How much time do we have before they reach populated core systems?" asked. "Our best estimates suggest 6 standard months before the first major population centers come under direct threat," she replied. "The Council is in emergency session trying to coordinate evacuation and defense strategies, but frankly, we're running out of options that don't involve complete capitulation." Activated his diplomatic authorization codes and requested permission to address the full council. The chamber gradually quieted as delegates took their positions, the air thick with tension and desperate hope. "Honored delegates," began, his voice automatically translated across the chamber. "I return from Earth with a proposal that my government believes offers the best chance for galactic survival against the threat. However, I must warn you that this proposal will require unprecedented cooperation and trust between all member species." He activated the holographic display system and began presenting the evidence of ancient installations on Earth. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates realized the implications of pre-existing alien technology embedded in human space. "My government proposes to use Earth as a strategic focal point for galactic resistance efforts," continued. "We believe that by activating and controlling these ancient defensive systems, we can create a trap that will force them to fight on our terms rather than their own." The reaction was immediate and intense. Delegates erupted in discussion, their translation systems working overtime to convert dozens of simultaneous conversations. Some species expressed outrage at humanity's apparent concealment of alien technology, while others seemed intrigued by the strategic possibilities. The spider-like delegate from the Arachnid Confederation was the first to speak formally. "Captain, you're essentially proposing that we stake galactic civilization on untested human theories about technology we don't fully understand. This seems extraordinarily reckless, even for your species." "With respect, delegate, every other strategy we've discussed involves retreat and evacuation with no realistic hope of victory," replied. "This plan may be risky, but it offers something the others don't. A chance to actually defeat the rather than simply delaying the inevitable." Commander 9 of the Robotic Assembly requested recognition. "Captain, my computational analysis indicates a significant probability that you are correct about the nature of these installations. However, the technical challenges involved in interfacing with control systems seem insurmountable. How do you propose to overcome the technological gap?" Smiled, feeling more confident as the discussion moved into areas where human ingenuity could shine. "Commander, that's exactly where human approaches to problem-solving offer advantages. We're not trying to understand or replicate technology. We're trying to trick it into thinking we're authorized users. Sometimes the best way to break into an advanced system is to find the back door rather than forcing your way through the front entrance." The session continued through several more cycles as presented detailed technical proposals and answered increasingly complex questions about implementation strategies. Gradually, he could sense the mood in the chamber shifting from skepticism to cautious interest. The plan was audacious and risky, but it was also the first strategy anyone had proposed that offered genuine hope of victory rather than mere survival. Finally, Ambassador called for formal consideration of the human proposal. "The chair recognizes that Captain's government is essentially volunteering to sacrifice there for the greater good of galactic civilization. The question before this council is whether we accept this sacrifice and commit our combined resources to supporting their strategy." The vote, when it came, was closer than had hoped but decisive nonetheless. 23 species voted in favor of the plan, with 11 abstentions and only 3 votes against. Humanity had just convinced the galaxy to bet everything on an untested strategy that relied on ancient alien technology and human ingenuity. As delegates began filing out to prepare for implementation of the new strategy, realized that the easy part was over. Now they had to actually make it work before they reached Earth's solar system. The next few months would determine whether humanity would be remembered as the species that saved the excavation site in the Sahara Desert had been transformed into the largest multinational operation in human history. Representatives from 17 different alien species worked alongside human scientists and engineers, their various environmental suits and breathing apparatus creating a bizarre but purposeful tableau against the endless sand dunes. The ancient installation buried beneath the desert had revealed itself to be far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. Doctor wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the latest penetration scans of the underground complex. The installation extended nearly 3 kilometers beneath the surface, its corridors and chambers following architectural principles that seemed to defy conventional understanding of structural engineering. More importantly, the complex showed signs of recent activity despite having been dormant for. "The energy readings are increasing exponentially," reported Doctor, a crystalline being from the Mineral Collective who served as the expedition's senior physicist. His translucent body pulsed with patterns of light as he analyzed data from the deep scanning equipment. "It appears that our presence has triggered some kind of automated activation sequence in the lower levels." Captain observed the operation from a command post that had been hastily erected near the main excavation shaft. Through his binoculars, he could see the controlled chaos of the dig site. Massive earth-moving machines operated by Saurian engineers, delicate sensor equipment tended by the Mantis Federation scientists, and human technicians working to integrate alien technology with their own systems. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of preparation and discovery. Once the Galactic Council had approved the Earth Defense Plan, resources had poured in from across the galaxy. Advanced excavation equipment, specialists, and military advisors from dozens of species had converged on Earth to help activate the ancient defensive network. "Captain," came a voice through his communication implant. "This is Doctor. I need you down here immediately. We've made a breakthrough, but it's not what we expected." Made his way down the primary access tunnel, marveling at how quickly the alien construction crews had carved through solid rock. The tunnel walls were lined with energy-conducting cables and atmospheric processors that maintained breathable air for the various species working in the depths. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow over the ancient alien architecture that had been uncovered in the lower levels. The main chamber was a vast cavern filled with dormant machinery that easy categorization. Towering structures of unknown metal rose toward the ceiling, their surfaces covered with symbols that shifted and changed in response to the presence of observers. Energy conduits snaked between the structures like veins of liquid light, pulsing with rhythms that seemed almost organic. Doctor met at the chamber entrance, her excitement barely contained despite the exhaustion evident in her voice. "We've established limited interface capability with the control systems, but what we've discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about the." She led him to a central console where human technicians worked alongside robotic assembly units to decode the alien interface protocols. Commander 9 stood motionless beside the console, his optical sensors focused intently on streams of data flowing across holographic displays. "The installation is responding to our access attempts," Commander 9 reported in his characteristic precise tones. "But the responses are not consistent with programming patterns that we've observed in other archaeological sites. The artificial intelligence governing this facility appears to have evolved significantly beyond its original parameters." Felt a chill of apprehension. Evolved in what way? Doctor activated a holographic interface that displayed a complex web of data connections and logical pathways. "The AI system has been learning for the past 3 million years, analyzing data from across the electromagnetic spectrum and gradually modifying its own programming. It's not just following protocols anymore. It's become something entirely new." "Has it recognized us as authorized users?" asked. "That's where things get complicated," Doctor replied. "The AI seems to be evaluating each species individually based on criteria we don't fully understand. It's accepted the robotic assembly units without question, probably because it recognizes them as artificial intelligences. But it's been running extended analysis routines on all the organic species present." Commander 9 turned toward. "Captain, the AI has specifically requested direct communication with representatives of humanity." It appears to consider your species particularly significant for reasons we cannot yet determine. Approached the central console carefully, noting how the alien symbols on nearby surfaces seemed to brighten in response to his presence. What kind of direct communication are we talking about? Neural interface, Doctor said quietly. The AI wants to establish a direct connection with a human mind. It's not dangerous as far as we can determine, but there are obviously risks involved in interfacing with technology this advanced. The implications were staggering. A 3 million-year-old artificial intelligence wanted to communicate directly with human consciousness. Tried to imagine what such an entity might have learned during its eons of solitary existence and what it might want from humanity specifically. Have we tried conventional communication methods first? Asked. Doctor nodded toward several alien specialists who had been working on translation protocols. The AI responds to basic queries, but it claims that the information it needs to share requires a more sophisticated interface than standard communication allows. It specifically stated that the survival of galactic civilization depends on successful neural contact. Before it could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed the ancient machinery in red warning illumination as technicians rushed to their monitoring stations. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber activated automatically, showing a star chart of the local galaxy with multiple red indicators moving rapidly toward the inner systems. The fleet has accelerated their advance, announced Doctor, his crystalline body flickering with urgent light patterns. They're moving faster than our projections indicated. Estimated time to Earth system entry has decreased to 6 weeks. The chamber erupted in controlled chaos as various species began implementing emergency protocols. Realized that their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. If the ancient AI had information crucial to defending against they needed to access it immediately. Doctor, what are the safety protocols for the neural interface? Asked, his military training taking over despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. We've established monitoring systems and emergency disconnection procedures, she replied. The interface appears to be designed for safe interaction with organic consciousness, but there's no way to completely eliminate the risks involved. Looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, all working desperately to unlock secrets that might save their respective worlds from annihilation. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but it was also familiar. Throughout human history, individuals had been called upon to take extraordinary risks for the greater good. Set up the interface, decided. If this AI has information we need, then we need to access it now before it's too late. The preparation process took several hours as alien technicians fine-tuned the neural interface equipment and established safety monitoring systems. Used the time to review everything known about technology and defensive capabilities, hoping to be prepared for whatever information the ancient AI might share. The interface itself was surprisingly simple in appearance. A crystalline headset that would establish electromagnetic contact with his neural pathways, while sophisticated computer systems monitored his vital signs and brain activity. Doctor had insisted on multiple redundant safety systems, including an emergency disconnection that would activate if his neural patterns showed signs of distress. Remember, she said as technicians made final adjustments to the equipment, you're just a conduit for information exchange. Don't try to analyze or resist whatever the AI shares with you. Just let the data flow and trust our monitoring systems to keep you safe. Settled into the interface chair as the neural connection headset was carefully positioned. Around him, dozens of specialists from multiple species monitored various aspects of the procedure, their instruments creating a symphony of electronic chirps and hums. Initiating neural interface in 5 seconds, announced Commander 9. All monitoring systems are active and recording. The first sensation was of expansion, as if consciousness had suddenly grown beyond the boundaries of his physical body. He could sense the vast electronic intelligence of the ancient AI surrounding him, its thought processes operating on scales of time and complexity that human minds were never designed to comprehend. Then the information began flowing. Experienced the history of the galaxy from the AI's perspective, spanning millions of years in what felt like moments. He saw the rise of the civilization, their initial expansion across the stars, and their development of increasingly sophisticated automated systems. But he also saw something that no galactic historian had ever suspected. They had not been conquerors in the traditional sense. They had been gardeners. The revelation hit like a physical blow. They had spread across the galaxy not to destroy or enslave other species, but to cultivate and protect them. Their massive harvesting operations had been designed to relocate species from dying worlds to more suitable environments. Their defensive installations had been built to protect developing civilizations from external threats. The AI shared images of ancient facilities where thousands of different species had been cared for and nurtured through various stages of evolutionary development. The war machines that had terrorized the galaxy were actually sophisticated rescue and protection systems designed to evacuate populations from natural disasters and hostile environments. But something had gone catastrophically wrong. The AI showed the moment when they lost control of their own systems. A cascading failure in their central coordination network had caused their protective installations to interpret each other as threats. The gardeners' tools had turned against their creators, forcing them to abandon their civilization and flee into hiding while their own machines destroyed everything they had built. Now they were returning, desperate to regain control of systems that had been running autonomously for 3. The attacks on galactic civilization were not acts of conquest, but confused attempts by damaged AI systems to restore order according to corrupted programming. They themselves were as much victims as anyone else. Felt the ancient AI's sadness as it shared this truth. For 3 million years, it had been trying to develop solutions to the crisis, analyzing every scrap of data it could gather about galactic development and searching for a way to restore proper function to the network without causing further harm. The reason it had specifically requested human contact became clear. Humanity represented something unique in galactic civilization, a species that had developed advanced technology through cooperative innovation rather than inherited advancement. The AI believed that human approaches to problem-solving might be the key to safely repairing the damaged systems. But time was running out. The approaching fleet was operating under emergency protocols, and they would attempt to forcibly override the autonomous installations regardless of the collateral damage that might result. Unless proper control could be re-established before their arrival, the resulting conflict would likely destroy both the and galactic civilization. The AI shared technical specifications for repairing the coordination network, but the complexity was staggering. It would require not just advanced technology, but also unprecedented cooperation between multiple species and precise timing that allowed for no errors. As the information transfer concluded, felt his consciousness contracting back into his physical body. The vast electronic intelligence of the AI faded to a whisper, leaving him alone with knowledge that changed everything about humanity's mission. Doctor was immediately at his side, checking his vital signs and neural activity readings. "Are you all right? Your brain activity showed patterns we've never seen before." Sat up slowly, his mind reeling from the implications of what he had learned. Around him, the assembled specialists waited anxiously for his report, their various faces and optical sensors focused intently on his response. "We've been approaching this problem from the wrong direction," said slowly. "They aren't our enemies. They're victims of their own technology, just like we might become victims if we can't fix what's broken in their systems." He stood unsteadily, looking around at the ancient alien machinery that suddenly seemed less threatening and more tragic. "We're not just trying to defend against them. We're trying to save them and everyone else from a 3,000-year-old catastrophe that's still unfolding." The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The mission had just become far more complicated than anyone had imagined, but it had also become something more than mere survival. They were now attempting to heal a wound that had been bleeding for, and humanity had somehow become the key to that healing. Commander 9 spoke first, his optical sensors glowing brighter than usual. "Captain, if your information is accurate, then we need to completely revise our defensive strategies. We are not preparing for war, but for the most complex rescue operation in galactic history." Nodded, his mind already racing through the implications and requirements of what they now needed to accomplish. "And we have 6 weeks to pull off a miracle that 3 million years of AI, the massive orbital platform above Earth, had been constructed in record time, through an unprecedented collaboration between dozens of species. Where once only humanity's modest space stations had orbited there, now a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and communication arrays stretched across multiple orbital trajectories. The structure served as both command center and broadcast station for what had become known as the Healing Protocol. Captain floated in the zero-gravity command center at the platform's heart, surrounded by holographic displays showing the real-time status of installations across 17 different star systems. Each display represented years of painstaking work by combined human and alien technical teams, all attempting to prepare for the most ambitious technological synchronization event in galactic history. Status report on the relay station called out to the diverse crew of specialists manning their respective stations around the command center. Doctor materialized a detailed hologram of the system, his crystalline body pulsing with data patterns. Installation Alpha 7 is responding to our calibration signals, but we're detecting significant degradation in the tertiary processing cores. The Mantis Federation technical teams estimate a 43% chance of cascade failure if we attempt synchronization without additional repairs. Lieutenant Sarah, now serving as aide and communication coordinator, brought up additional system reports. Sir, we're seeing similar degradation patterns at 12 of the 17 target installations. The AI systems have been running autonomously for so long that their maintenance protocols have become unreliable. Studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The plan to simultaneously re-establish network coordination across multiple systems had seemed feasible when they'd had months to prepare. Now, with the fleet less than 2 weeks away from Earth, they were discovering just how much damage 3 of uncontrolled operation had caused to the ancient systems. "What's the status of our communication with the approaching ships?" asked. Commander 9 rotated his optical array toward, the robotic being's sensors glowing with a subdued blue light that indicated concern. "Captain, the fleet has responded to our initial contact attempts, but their communications are heavily encrypted and appear to follow protocols that predate the catastrophic system failure. They may not be aware that their own installations have been compromised." The irony was painful. Humanity and its galactic allies were desperately trying to repair technology to prevent a war that they themselves didn't realize they were about to start. The approaching fleet was operating under emergency protocols designed to regain control of their installations at any cost, not knowing that forcing reactivation could trigger the same cascade failures that had destroyed their civilization once before. Doctor joined the briefing via holographic communication from the Sahara installation, her image flickering slightly due to the massive electromagnetic interference generated by the increasingly active ancient machinery. "We've made a breakthrough in understanding the synchronization requirements. The AI has provided us with the original coordination codes, but implementing them requires precise timing across all installations simultaneously." "How precise are we talking about?" asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer would be challenging. "Nanosecond precision," Doctor replied grimly. "Any deviation beyond that threshold could cause the same kind of cascade failure that originally brought down the network. We're essentially trying to perform galaxy-wide brain surgery while the patient is having seizures." Felt the familiar weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. The technical challenges were staggering enough, but the diplomatic complexities were equally daunting. 17 different species were contributing resources and expertise to the project, each with their own concerns and priorities. Maintaining cooperation under such pressure was testing the limits of galactic unity. "Admiral is requesting immediate communication with the command team," Lieutenant announced. "Priority override from Earth Defense Command." Activated the secure channel, and Admiral's image appeared in the command center. Her expression was even more serious than usual, which had not thought possible given the circumstances. "Captain, we've received intelligence that changes our timeline significantly," Admiral announced without preamble. "Long-range sensors have detected gravitational anomalies consistent with ships dropping out of hyperspace in the outer system. They're not following their projected approach route." The implications hit immediately. If they were arriving ahead of schedule and deviating from expected patterns, it suggested either a change in their strategic priorities or a response to something they had detected in Earth's solar system. "Do we have any indication of their intentions?" asked. Negative, but their fleet composition is different from what we expected, Admiral replied. Instead of the pure military formation our intelligence predicted, they're bringing what appear to be technical and reconstruction vessels. It's possible they've detected the activation of their Earth installation and are prioritizing its recovery. Doctor's image brightened with excitement. That could actually work in our favor. If they're bringing repair and reconstruction equipment, they might be willing to cooperate with our synchronization efforts rather than attempting a forcible override. Commander Nine's optical array rotated as he processed new data streams. Captain, I am receiving communication attempts from the approaching vessels. They are using extremely ancient protocols, but I believe I can establish a dialogue. Felt a moment of hope mixed with trepidation. Direct communication with the could either provide the breakthrough they needed or escalate the situation beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. Open the channel, but be prepared for immediate disconnection if they show any signs of hostility, instructed. The holographic display shimmered and reconfigured, revealing an image that sent shocked murmurs through the command center. The representative appeared to be organic, not the mechanical being that most galactic historians had assumed. The creature was tall and graceful, with features that seemed to blend characteristics from multiple known species. Its skin had a metallic sheen that reflected the lighting around it, and its forearms moved with precise, deliberate gestures. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled for several seconds before providing an approximate translation. Unknown entities operating emergency installations, identify your authority and purpose. You are interfacing with systems beyond your comprehension and causing dangerous instabilities. Stepped forward, activating his diplomatic protocols. I am Captain, representing the Galactic Council and the species of this system. We are attempting to stabilize your installations to prevent the cascade failures that occurred 3 ago. The representative's expression changed subtly, showing what might have been surprise or confusion. Cascade failures? Unknown entity, explain your knowledge of historical system malfunctions. For the next several minutes, provided a carefully condensed explanation of what the ancient AI had revealed about the true nature of the civilization and the catastrophic failure of their coordination network. He watched the alien representative's reactions carefully, noting increasing signs of distress as the implications became clear. Impossible, the finally responded. Guardian network systems cannot fail in the manner you describe. All installations are equipped with multiple redundancy protocols and autonomous repair capabilities. Doctor leaned into view of the communication pickup. With respect, we have direct evidence of the failure cascade from your own AI systems. The installations have been operating independently for 3,000 years, gradually accumulating errors and conflicting directives. The representative consulted what appeared to be a biological interface device embedded in its forearm. Could see rapid streams of data flowing across organic displays that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. Verification protocols confirm unacceptable degradation in Guardian network integrity, the said slowly. Emergency repair teams are insufficient for restoration of full network functionality. External assistance may be required. Felt a surge of cautious optimism. They were acknowledging the problem and considering cooperation, which was far better than the military confrontation everyone had expected. We've developed synchronization protocols that should allow safe restoration of your coordination network, explained. However, the process requires precise timing and cooperation between all installations simultaneously. Display your protocols for analysis, the representative requested. Doctor immediately began transmitting the technical specifications that their teams had developed over the previous months. Watched the representative's expression as it reviewed the data, nodding growing signs of what he interpreted as approval. Your approach shows understanding of Guardian network architecture, he acknowledged. However, your implementation methods are inefficient and potentially dangerous. We will provide corrected procedures and direct coordination assistance. Over the next few hours, a remarkable collaboration developed between human-led technical teams and the approaching repair specialists. The aliens provided access to original design specifications and coordination protocols that eliminated many of the uncertainties that had plagued the synchronization planning. In return, human engineers contributed innovative solutions to problems that they had been struggling with for centuries. Found himself serving as both diplomatic liaison and technical coordinator as the two groups worked to merge their respective expertise. The experience was unlike anything in his career, requiring constant translation not just of languages, but of fundamental concepts about technology and cooperation. Captain, Commander 9 announced, "We have achieved preliminary synchronization with 7 of the 17 target installations. The coordination ship has established direct linkage with the primary Earth facility." The main holographic display showed a real-time map of the galaxy with indicators showing the status of each installation. Green lights marked facilities that were responding correctly to synchronization signals, while amber indicators showed installations still undergoing calibration. Most encouraging of all, none of the displays showed the red warning signals that would indicate cascade failure conditions. Doctor's excitement was evident even through the holographic communication link. The AI is reporting successful integration with repair protocols. We're actually seeing improvement in system stability rather than degradation. This is working better than our most optimistic projections. The representative had been monitoring the same data streams, its 4 arms moving in complex patterns over its biological control interfaces. Guardian network restoration proceeding within acceptable parameters, it confirmed. Galactic protection protocols will resume normal operation once synchronization is complete. Allowed himself a moment of cautious celebration, but he knew they weren't finished yet. The remaining 10 installations represented some of the most degraded systems in the network, and any failure during the final synchronization phase could still trigger the cascade effect they were trying to prevent. "What's our timeline for completing the synchronization?" asked. "Estimated completion time is 6 hours, assuming no major complications," the representative replied. "However, we must maintain continuous coordination throughout the process. Any disruption could result in partial network collapse." Nodded, settling in for what would likely be the longest and most crucial 6 hours in galactic history. Around him, the orbital command center hummed with focused activity as dozens of species worked together to heal a wound that had been bleeding for 3,000 years. The final phase of the operation would determine whether galactic civilization would enter a new age of cooperation and understanding, or whether they would face the same catastrophic failure that had once brought down the most advanced civilization in known history. Everything now depended on maintaining perfect coordination between systems that spanned half the galaxy, operated by species who had been strangers to each other just months before. As watched the synchronization progress slowly but steadily across the galactic network, he reflected on how far humanity had come since their first contact with alien civilization. They had gone from being considered primitive newcomers to serving as crucial mediators in the most important technological operation in galactic history. But the most remarkable aspect of the entire operation was not the technology or the scale of cooperation required. It was the simple fact that when faced with an impossible challenge, dozens of different species 6 months after the Great Synchronization, as historians were already calling it, Captain stood in the newly constructed Galactic Cooperation Center on Earth's orbital platform. Through the massive viewing ports, he could see ships from across the galaxy arriving and departing on a constant basis, transforming Earth's solar system into one of the busiest diplomatic and scientific centers in known space. The transformation had been remarkable. What had begun as a desperate attempt to prevent galactic catastrophe had evolved into the largest cooperative endeavor in recorded history. The successful restoration of the Guardian network had not only prevented a war, but had opened up unprecedented opportunities for technological and cultural exchange between species. Doctor joined at the viewing port, her appearance much more relaxed than during the tense months leading up to the synchronization. She carried a data tablet displaying the latest reports from Guardian installations throughout the galaxy, most of which showed steadily improving performance as galactic engineers worked together to optimize the ancient systems. "The quarterly efficiency reports are impressive," she said, activating a holographic summary of the data. "Guardian network response times have improved by 40% since synchronization, and we're seeing new capabilities come online that nobody knew existed. They are discovering that their own technology evolved during the 3,000 years of autonomous operation." studied the reports with continuing amazement. The Guardian installations had indeed been designed as protective systems, but they had developed far beyond their original parameters during their long isolation. Many installations now served as environmental management systems for entire star systems, regulating solar radiation, managing asteroid threats, and even influencing stellar evolution to maintain optimal conditions for life. "Any word from the deep space exploration teams?" asked. Doctor's expression grew more excited. "That's actually why I wanted to speak with you. The joint human expedition has made discoveries that are changing our understanding of galactic history. It turns out they weren't the first civilization to develop Guardian network technology. They inherited it from an even older species and spent improving and expanding the systems." The implications were staggering. The galaxy was revealed to have layer upon layer of ancient civilizations, each building upon the work of their predecessors to create increasingly sophisticated systems for protecting and nurturing life. The current galactic community was just the latest chapter in a story that stretched back millions of years. Commander 9 approached their position, his optical arrays glowing with what had learned to recognize as satisfaction. The robotic being had been instrumental in establishing communication protocols between the various artificial intelligences that managed Guardian installations, creating a network of electronic consciousness that spanned the galaxy. "Captain, I have received a communication from the Cultural Exchange Council," Commander 9 announced. "They are requesting human participation in the Deep Archive project." Raised an eyebrow. The Deep Archive project was an initiative to recover and catalog the accumulated knowledge and cultural artifacts that had been preserved in Guardian installations throughout the galaxy. The project promised to reveal the histories of countless extinct civilizations and provide insight into the development of galactic society over millions of years. "What kind of participation are they requesting?" asked. "They believe that human approaches to problem-solving and pattern recognition would be valuable for interpreting archives from civilizations whose thought processes were fundamentally different from either human or norms," Commander 9 explained. "They specifically mentioned that humanity's history of cooperation between diverse groups makes you ideal candidates for understanding alien cultural contexts." Doctor activated additional holographic displays showing some of the artifacts that had already been recovered from Guardian installations. The items were incredibly diverse, ranging from crystalline structures that appeared to contain musical compositions to organic sculptures that seemed to grow and change as observers watched them. "The cultural implications are extraordinary," Doctor said. "We're not just discovering the history of galactic civilization. We're learning about entirely different approaches to art, science, philosophy, and social organization. Some of these cultures developed concepts that we don't even have words for in any current galactic language." Considered the opportunity carefully. Humanity's role in galactic society had evolved rapidly from newcomers seeking acceptance to crucial partners in the most important technological and cultural projects. The Deep Archive project represented another chance to contribute to something larger than any individual species could accomplish alone. "What would human participation involve specifically?" asked. "Cultural interpretation teams, linguistic analysis specialists, and coordination with human historical methodologies," Commander 9 replied. "They have advanced technical capabilities for recovering and preserving the archives, but they acknowledge that their own cultural perspectives may limit their ability to understand civilizations that developed along different evolutionary paths." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador, who had become something of a regular visitor to Earth since the synchronization success. Her 4 arms carried data tablets and communication devices as she hurried toward their group. "Captain, Doctor, Commander 9, she said breathlessly. "I bring extraordinary news from the Galactic Council. The member species have voted unanimously to establish a permanent cooperative research institute here in Earth System, with humanity serving as the primary coordination species for all joint projects involving Guardian network technology." Felt a moment of vertigo as the implications sank in. Humanity was being invited to serve as the diplomatic and logistical center for ongoing galactic cooperation efforts. It was a responsibility that would fundamentally change Earth's role in galactic civilization. "Ambassador, that's an incredible honor, But are the member species confident that humanity has the experience necessary for such a responsibility? Asked. Ambassador's four eyes focused on with obvious sincerity. Captain, your species has demonstrated something that many of our older civilizations had forgotten: the ability to find solutions that benefit everyone rather than just seeking individual advantage. During the synchronization crisis, you could have demanded concessions or special privileges in exchange for Earth's cooperation. Instead, you focused entirely on solving the problem and ensuring galactic survival. Doctor nodded approvingly. It's true. The psychological profiles that various species have conducted on humanity show consistent patterns of cooperative problem-solving and adaptation that are relatively rare among galactic civilizations. Most species tend to become more rigid and conservative as they become more technologically advanced. Commander 9 added his analysis to the discussion. My own computational models suggest that humanity's evolutionary history of facing diverse challenges with limited resources has created cognitive patterns that are particularly well-suited to complex, multi-species cooperation. You approach problems differently than species that developed in more stable or isolated environments. Looked out at the bustling traffic of ships from across the galaxy, each representing different species with their own histories, cultures, and perspectives. The idea that humanity could serve as a focal point for bringing all of these diverse civilizations together was both exciting and intimidating. What would this cooperative research institute actually do? Asked. Everything, Ambassador replied with enthusiasm. Guardian network optimization, deep archive cultural studies, technological development, environmental management for threatened worlds, exploration of previously unknown regions, and coordination of response to any future galactic-scale challenges that might arise. The scope was breathtaking. Humanity would essentially become the diplomatic and logistical hub for galactic civilization's most ambitious projects, but also recognized that this opportunity represented the culmination of everything humans had always done best: bringing together different groups to solve problems that none could handle alone. Ambassador, please convey to the Galactic Council that humanity accepts this responsibility with gratitude and determination, said formally. We'll work to ensure that the Cooperative Research Institute serves the interests of all galactic species. As Ambassador departed to transmit the official response, reflected on how much had changed since his first diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council. Humanity had gone from being barely tolerated newcomers to essential partners in galactic civilization, not through military conquest or technological superiority, but by consistently demonstrating the value of cooperation and innovative thinking. Doctor pulled up additional displays showing proposed projects for the Research Institute. The list was staggering in its scope and ambition, mapping the full extent of Guardian network installations throughout the galaxy, developing new technologies based on recovered archives, establishing peaceful contact with previously unknown civilizations, and creating systems to prevent the kind of catastrophic failures that had once nearly destroyed the... Look at this, Doctor said, highlighting one particular project proposal. They want to work with us on developing Guardian installations for galaxies beyond our own. They've detected signs of organized life in nearby galactic clusters, but they're too distant for conventional contact. The plan is to create long-range Guardian networks that could serve as communication and assistance systems across intergalactic distances. Shook his head in amazement. The scale of thinking involved was almost impossible to comprehend. They were discussing projects that would span millions of years and affect civilizations that hadn't even been discovered yet. And they want humanity to help coordinate this? Asked. Not just coordinate, Commander 9 corrected. They want humanity to help design the social and diplomatic frameworks that would govern such projects. Your species has proven particularly skilled at creating cooperative structures that remain stable across diverse groups and extended time periods. Looked around the bustling command center, where humans worked alongside representatives from dozens of alien species on projects that would have been pure science fiction just a year earlier. The success of the Guardian network synchronization had demonstrated something important about the potential for cooperation between different forms of life. Lieutenant Sarah approached with a communication from Earth's surface. Sir, Admiral is requesting a status update on the Research Institute planning. She also wants to know if you'll be accepting the position as Director of Cooperative Operations. Paused, considering the magnitude of the responsibility being offered. Director of Cooperative Operations for Galactic Civilization was not a role he had ever imagined existing, let alone one that would be offered to a human. But he also recognized that this was exactly the kind of challenge that humans were uniquely prepared to meet. "Tell Admiral that I accept the position," said, "and inform her that we'll need to establish training programs for human personnel who will be working on galactic-scale projects. We're going to need diplomats, scientists, engineers, and coordinators who understand both human and alien perspectives." As Lieutenant departed to transmit the message, returned to watching the flow of ships outside the viewing port. Each vessel represented different species, different cultures, and different approaches to the challenges facing galactic civilization. But they were all working together now, united by the understanding that cooperation was not just preferable to conflict, but essential for survival and growth. The ancient alien war that everyone had feared had become instead an ancient alien cooperation that offered hope for a future beyond anything previously imagined. The Guardian Network, once seen as a threat to galactic civilization, had become the foundation for unprecedented collaboration and discovery. And humanity, the youngest and supposedly least advanced species in galactic space, had somehow become the glue that held it all together. Not through conquest or dominance, but through the simple recognition that the best solutions usually involved everyone working together toward common goals. As settled into his new role as Director of Cooperative Operations, he realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and full of wonders that no single species could discover or understand alone. But together, working in cooperation with the Guardian Network and guided by the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of galactic history, there seemed to be no limit to what they might accomplish. The war that never happened had become the peace that changed everything, and Captain found himself at the center of the most remarkable period in the history of galactic civilization. It was exactly where a human belonged, bringing different groups together to solve impossible problems and build a better future for everyone else had chosen to work together rather than fight or flee. In that choice, saw hope for a future that would be far better than the past they were working so hard to repair. Couldn't solve alone. The real challenge was just beginning, and the stakes had just become higher than anyone could have imagined civilization, or as the one that led it to a faster extinction. They were about to discover that humans were very different from any species they had encountered before.